Hi, I'm Kesenya and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. I'm your Astro Weather Girl, here with this week's Astro Weather Report. I'm going to show you how the stars are going to affect your life this week. Well, hello everybody and welcome to one of the most important videos on astrology you're going to watch this year. We're looking at the eclipse on the 24th or the 25th, depending on where you are in the world, of October, the new moon eclipse in Scorpio. This is part of a very special series of eclipses, and there will be a second eclipse in this set that's occurring on the 8th of November. I'll be talking about that in a future video. This video is all about the new moon eclipse. Can't wait to share all about it with you. Thank you so much for joining me. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the nature of solar eclipses, which is what we're experiencing right now under this energy. I'll be talking about the new moon in Scorpio and its energy and what it usually represents. I'll be talking about the chart of this particular eclipse and all the energies that are playing into the nature of this particular eclipse chart. I'll also be talking about whereabouts this eclipse is visible in the world and what that means. I'm also going to break down for you what it means if you have planets, certain planets interacting with this eclipse in any way. And I'm going to break down what that will mean for you. And I'll also be talking about the Saros cycle that this eclipse is part of. There's so much to discuss here. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're also going to get a brief all signs breakdown for what it means for your sun, moon, and rising signs. If you're watching this on Patreon, you're going to get so much more. You're going to get a ceremony or a ritual, if you want to call it that, to create right energy space to work with this eclipse energies. And you're also going to get super extended discussions of all signs, the all signs breakdown. You're going to get so much more breakdown of what this eclipse means for you and what it might bring into your life. So if you want to join the Patreon page and be part of these extended personal all signs breakdowns for this report and the ceremony, then you can join Patreon if you would like to. The link's in the description below. It's very easy to find, and you can join for just a month, or you can just join for this video if you want to, or you could join for a year or indefinitely, as long as you want to. But if you join, you will learn so much and be so richly blessed by joining our beautiful Guiding Star family at the Patreon site. So, and once again, the link's in the description below. So let's take a look at the nature of solar eclipses. And as the name suggests, a solar eclipse is when the moon moves in front of the sun and it blocks the sun. So this is where our vantage point is geocentrically on the earth, and here is the moon right in front of the sun. And because these eclipses are within proximity of the nodes of the moon, here this one is the south node of the moon, that then creates almost an exact coverage of the moon over the sun, because it's a phenomenon that is quite incredible. Our moon, from our vantage point on earth, looks like it's the same size as the sun in the sky, even though in reality they are completely different sizes. From the distance that we are from the sun and the size of our moon, it fits perfectly. I mean, what are the odds? There's probably something in that. But the moon exactly fits over the sun and can completely cover it in a solar eclipse. Now, this is only a partial solar eclipse. It's not a full solar eclipse, but it is still an eclipse nonetheless, and we will be subject to this new moon or solar eclipse and its energies. So let's talk about that. Well, the solar eclipses usually trigger events within a week either side of the eclipse. And they can cause events up to 6 months afterwards, but usually you'll know what's going on because something will happen in the week before or the week after the eclipse that'll be like a beacon light, a neon sign for what else is going to unfold in the 6 months following this eclipse. So do pay attention. Like, we're already in this zone for the eclipse to be activated. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we're already in the zone for eclipse activation as this video goes out. So therefore, start looking at what's happening in your life. How are you feeling about certain things? Where is the energy pulling you? What people have come into your life all of a sudden that you didn't expect to see? What events have unfolded? What upheavals have happened? What joys have come your way? Do an analysis over the next 2 weeks, because there's going to be something very telling in those things. Now, we also need to consider not only the week before and the week after, but we can actually consider the eclipse active when the sun moves within 19 degrees of either side of the nodes. According to one of my very wonderful teachers, this is when the eclipse activations can really start to activate. So this eclipse, particularly at 2 degrees of Scorpio, is occurring when the nodes are at 13 degrees of Scorpio. So what we look for is, when was the sun 19 degrees before 13 degrees? And that takes us back to the 24th degree of Libra. So when the sun was at the 24th degrees of Libra on the 18th of October, that's Australian time, that is when we entered this eclipse activation phase. So you can, if you want to use traditional Western astrology, that is looking at the week before and the week after. If you want to use this really very accurate theory of 19 degrees, when the sun is 19 degrees prior to the nodes, then you would look at what has been happening in your life from the 18th of October. Now, interestingly, did you know that just before an eclipse occurs, there is always a drop in the Earth's electromagnetic emissions? A bit like what happens just as the sun sets. There's a shift in the emissions and a change atmospherically. I just want to point that out. So there is an energy shift, even if it is visibly imperceptible. It is a measurable scientific variance that eclipses do cause. Worth noting that, especially as we are so sensitive on Earth as human beings in our human shell, or souls in our human shell, we are so sensitive to shifts of energy. So in mundane astrology being the astrology of nations and states, solar eclipses usually affect the leadership. So it's not so much an effect on the masses, on our experience as ordinary plebs on the earth. It's much more likely with a solar eclipse that we're going to see in mundane astrology effects on leaders. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we need that to happen with this solar eclipse. Usually that will affect leadership in the area where this solar eclipse is visible, because it's not visible all over the earth. It is actually rarer to see a solar eclipse than it is a lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipses, which is what the 8th of November eclipse will be, they're usually visible from up to 50% of the area of the earth, depending on the size and duration of the eclipse, but they can be seen from up to half the earth. But solar eclipses are usually only visible from a much smaller area of the earth. And so we're going to be looking shortly at where this solar eclipse is going to be seen from, and we want to keep an eye on what's happening with the leadership of the countries where that solar eclipse is visible. Now, for us personally, let's leave the mundane astrology aside for the time being. Any changes that come with a solar eclipse will be caused in our lives from the outside in. Okay, so external events, external people, circumstances, situations, things will occur in our lives that we need to adjust and adapt to. So things that are out of our control that we need to be flexible about. Keep that in mind with all solar eclipses, and particularly with this one. Some astrological texts indicate that a solar eclipse or a new moon eclipse is felt stronger by people who have a day chart The sun is the more significant luminary in a day chart than a night chart where the moon is the more significant luminary. So if you were born during the day, you might notice the energetic impact of this eclipse more prominently in your life. Now, we'll be talking very shortly about what these energetic imprints can look like, what you might actually physically experience. We'll talk about that very shortly. But eclipses always mark a major turning point in life. So if you have the sun as your major luminary, if you're born during the day, then you might experience more major turning points in your life. For the full moon eclipse that's occurring on the 8th of November, it will be people born at night that will be most impacted according to these ancient texts. So your turn will come, all of you, like myself, who were born at night. But like I said, eclipses mark a major turning point in life. So the universe is intent on moving us all forward in some way now. There'll be no going back from whatever occurs. It is time to let go of the old and embrace the new. The eclipses are always about moving more into our destiny personally and collectively. It's very much about realigning with your purpose and your intent for incarnation. Anything superfluous, can never get that word out, superfluous to your intent for incarnation as a soul needs to be let go of. What is not necessary, what you've outgrown, what is no longer of value in your life, what is no longer helping you or supporting you on your mission and purpose for being here, it's time to say sayonara to whatever that may be. So whatever happens now, even if there's a letting go of things, and believe me, with this eclipse, there will be a letting go of things. Whatever happens now, it is for your highest good. Do keep that in mind. And remember to always act with kindness and forgiveness and gentleness to people, because guess what? You might be the person that someone else is letting go of. And so if that's what happens during the eclipse, carry your dignity with you and allow that energy for the highest good to unfold. Because if it's for the highest good for that person to let go of you out of their life, it's also for your highest good to say goodbye to them and move on and find somebody, if you want to be in partnership, who is, aligned with your now current purpose for incarnation. So do keep that in mind. It's okay. We don't own anyone, and neither do we owe anybody anything in this life other than kindness. This includes kindness to ourselves. And I just want to spell that out because oftentimes eclipses will trigger relational circumstances, okay? For nearly, well, not nearly everyone. It really depends on where it's occurring in your chart. But we know, and you've heard me talk about this over the last couple of weeks, there's so much happening in the skies that is churning up relationships. And this eclipse is a part of that, okay? Because eclipses do often affect our connections and our partnerships. Now, equally with the being dignified about letting go of things that are no longer here to serve you, whatever they may be, relationships, jobs, homes, place of living, family members, whatever, we also need to make space, and that's what this eclipse is doing, make space to allow in what needs to come into our lives. Don't fight it, go with the flow. Remember, this is an important turning point in your life because a complete change of pace is now at hand. I don't know about you, I'm so ready for this. I love eclipses because I'm someone who needs a lot of change. I have a majority of planets in cardinal signs, and I desperately love change. I can't stand to be stuck for too long in the one condition. Anyway, so I love eclipses for that reason, even if they bring upheaval. I'm ready to keep going, moving on and growing and evolving. But there will be, for many of us, especially if you've got planets around the point of the eclipse, which we'll talk about shortly, there will be some news of big life events that are going to affect you. So, like I said, in the preceding days before the eclipse and the days after the eclipse, within sort of roughly a week's time frame, you're going to get some message, some indication from the universe that this is going to be the theme for you over the coming 6 months. Be prepared. So solar eclipses, because they are new moons, tend to create new beginnings and bright new opportunities. So keep that in mind. Even if it looks like things are being let go of out of your life, and often they will be, it's in order to bring in the new and create a bright new opportunity for you. So often there will be some random event that you didn't expect. So news of something happening, some random event happening. It is an exciting time of change. Pay attention to all events, news, gossip, interactions that you have with people during this eclipse season, because they are going to be an important part of your life journey, particularly over the next 6 months. Now, this eclipse falls with the South Node in Scorpio. So this is why there is this double extra energy of letting go of something out of your life to make way for the new. So South Node is to release, to detach from, to let go of. So if we're going to talk about if you've got planets or points around this eclipse at 2 degrees in Scorpio, we're going to talk about that shortly. But if you do and you know your chart, I will point out if you don't know your chart and you want to find out about your chart and how to read it, then head over to my Learn Astrology page at the website and do my very short course in learning to read your own astrology charts. Only 35 Australian dollars, so very cheap if you're in America or Europe. Our exchange rate's terrible. Anyhow, so as I was saying, the South Node is about excreting something out of your life, letting go of it and saying goodbye to something. And with a new moons represent the start of a new cycle of the moon usually, and the sun as it grows through the horoscope over the coming month into a full moon, and then wanes into the next new moon that will occur. So it is a new beginning of a new cycle, but something's got to be let go of first. Okay, so there's always a letting go whenever the South Node is involved in an eclipse. If this eclipse is falling on your sun placement, we're going to talk about this shortly, but I just want you to know it's going to be a key year in your life. This whole year, not just the next 6 months, but this whole year is going to be impactful for you because you're having an eclipse on your birthday. You're carrying it in the chart of your horoscope for the year ahead. So you're carrying this eclipse with you all year energetically. So a big year in your life for sure. If you happen to be a Leo rising or sun or moon person, you can also be more affected by this eclipse. Why is that? Because the sun is the ruler of your sign. And the sun is never eclipsed in the sky, is never hidden and invisible in the sky. I mean, unless it's at night, of course, and he's not actually above the horizon. But unlike other planets, the sun is the only planet that does not go invisible in the sky unless there is a new moon eclipse. And that's one of the reasons they're so powerful. Because every other planet at some point, like when the moon is new, any other time aside from an eclipse, the moon is invisible in the sky. We don't see it. When currently Venus is invisible in the sky because she's so close to the sun. Mercury goes too close to the sun and becomes invisible. And as do all the other planets. They become invisible when they conjunct with the sun. The only time the sun goes invisible is at the time of an eclipse, a new moon solar eclipse. So this is the only time for a Leo person who is in some way ruled by the sun. If it's your sun, your moon, or your rising sign, the sun is your ruler of Leo, then you will feel this effect because it's the only time that your ruling planet will disappear. Even if it's just for a couple of hours during the eclipse, but it will be felt by Leo people because of that reason. Now, I will also point out that eclipses that are occurring in the same element as your birth sign, so rising sun or moon sign, can generally feel more friendly to you. They are complementary to you. So if you have planets anywhere in Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer, you're going to feel a more beneficial impact from this eclipse because it's the same element. And basically the eclipse energy is trining those particular signs. So if you've got lots of water energy, then this eclipse might be felt strongly by you as well. Now, the new moon eclipse is occurring at 2 degrees of Scorpio, which we've said. This means it's a new moon in Scorpio. This occurs every year. We have a new moon in Scorpio. But this year, it's occurring when the nodes are there as well, and that is what's causing the eclipses in Scorpio. Other years, the nodes will be in other places in the chart, and it won't be an eclipse in Scorpio. So this year is special in that way because the nodes are causing an eclipse to occur in Scorpio. So when we have a new moon in Scorpio every year, it indicates that it's a time of rebirth, because that's what Scorpio is very much connected to: transformation, death of something, and rebirth. So you can see already the eclipse energy is about letting go of something to let something new in. And Scorpio is also about transformation, which involves dying to something and being reborn into something else. So already we can see that the theme of this eclipse is very strongly geared towards letting go of in order to welcome in something new, rebirth, and being reborn and transformed. Now, Scorpio is also emotional intimacy. And we might find that some people desire greater, deeper, more profound emotional intimacy as a result of this new moon. They want to connect in deeper, more real ways with partners. So that can be a prompting that the new moon in Scorpio can bring. No more superficiality. We don't want to just talk about the weather or the latest hairstyle or something. It's like yawn city. Enough already. I want deep, meaningful connection with others. No more superficiality. We can also, with this new moon, energy in Scorpio, be being called to let go of jealousies, obsessions, and grudges. That's the higher vibration of this energy, because Scorpio can trigger jealousies, obsessions, and grudges in people's lives as well. But I'm assuming everybody watching this wants the higher vibrational energy in their life, so we can let go of and transform from any jealousies, obsessions, and grudges. We could be inspired as well to make a new investment, because this Scorpio is connected in some ways to the 8th house. And so financial power is what we associate with Scorpio in this instance. So you might be making new investments to give you more financial power in your life. You might also invest in a new relationship that allows you to make a new bonded, deep connection. Scorpio topics. The other thing is that it is time to face your shadow. Now, you hear a lot of talk about this. Well, lately in New Age circles anyway, there's a lot of talk about your shadow self. There was a time, say 10, 15 years ago, when everyone was all light and send people light and love and light and light and light. But these days people are all talking about dealing with my shadow. Both are essential. You know, we are the yin yang. We are a combination of higher vibration and lower vibration, shadow and light, darkness and luminosity. We are a combination of everything, and we need to accept every part of us. But in Scorpio, with the new moon there, it is definitely time to do the shadow work. And what does that mean? You know, it's one of these bandied about, phrases, and it's like, well, what are you even talking about, do the shadow work? Well, it might mean doing some therapy. It might mean reading a self-help book. It might mean sitting and meditating and on where do I need to heal myself? Where are my wounds? What are my hurts? What is holding me back from the fullest, most abundant life possible? Where do I let other people down? Where do I let myself down? Where am I not being true? We look at all the darkness and all the difficulties within us, and we can resolve to change that. We can transform those things. And the new moon in Scorpio is a wonderful time for doing that sort of shadow work. It's not about beating up on yourself. It's about accepting that I have bits and pieces in me that don't serve my highest good, that are not helping me to be the best I can be, or I do have tendencies, like every human being, to dark things. We all do. Is that wrong? Well, according to the ancient Hermetic principles, the hate and love are just two extremes of the same energy. So is it wrong to hate? Is it wrong to love? We would say, well, no, it's not wrong to love, but hate and love are just two extremes of the same energy. And therefore, how can we love one and hate the other, or despise the other? It's just my personal belief, and I don't want to go off on some big philosophical rant here, which I am prone to doing. I do want to point out that we should accept all facets of us, the potential for evil in us and the potential for good. We should accept all things within us because that is our energetic wiring, I would say, astrologically. Not something to be beaten up on. I suck and I'm terrible and blah, blah, blah. But we should also remember that our behaviors that stem out of these facets of love and hate and other components of who we are should never detrimentally impact others. And the moment they do, that's when it becomes, I guess, what I would term as something evil or bad or whatever. You know, up until that point where it is hurting, wounding, controlling, dominating, impacting another person's life negatively, that's when it becomes bad juju, bad karma. So having shadow elements in yourself is not a bad thing. Acting upon those things to the detriment of the people in your life, I think that is. I just wanted to point that out, okay? There is a difference. Knowing our shadow is one thing, acting upon our shadow is another. So enough of that philosophical stuff, which I love. But I did want to point that out. New moon in Scorpio does tend to have these themes running all the way through it. Let's talk now about the chart of this eclipse. It is quite fascinating. What I'm going to be doing is looking at what is occurring in the astral skies from about 24 to 48 hours prior to the occurrence of the eclipse, because all of those energies will be tying into what we feel as eclipse energetic manifestation. So the first thing that we note is that Venus up here is in a conjunction with the new moon. It's very tightly joined in, and it's probably the most important factor, I would say, in the chart of this particular eclipse. But let me point out to you that Venus, sorry about that, Venus is sitting behind the sun. And remember, if we're looking at things geocentrically, we're sitting here on the earth looking out to the skies. The moon is going to be in front of the sun, causing a lunar eclipse, and Venus is behind them all, totally invisible. In other words, the sun and the moon are between Earth and Venus. She's around the other side of the sun. So while you will see many people describing this transit as a bringer of love and peace and harmony because Venus is Kesenya, Vedic astrology suggests that these themes will actually be somewhat lost on humanity right now because Venus is completely out of sight, and so too is all that she represents, which is love, peace, and harmony. Make no bones about it, this is not Venus Kesenya. Venus Kesenya only occurs when Venus is retrograde and in front of the sun. That is when she's in the heart of the sun and her energies come fully at the earth, completely energized by being in front of the sun, and we receive the energetic imprint of Venus. According to Vedic astrology, when she is behind the sun like this, it is combustion, not Kesenya. Wanted to point that out. So when a planet is combust, it is in the process of being symbolically purified. She is, after all, stronger than the sun when she's in the sign of Libra. So there is a divine purpose to this transit. And the reason I point out that she's stronger in Libra is that this conjunction occurs before they go into Scorpio together. So they're going to conjunct at 29 degrees of Libra, where Venus is stronger than the sun. And then they're going to move into Scorpio and create this eclipse 2 days later. So there is a divine purpose to this transit of Venus in the what we call superior conjunction when she is being purified, as I said. So we can consider that we are now in a process of refinement too. We're sort of alchemizing our current dynamic with money, love, partnership, things ruled by Venus, in readiness for her emergence and therefore her energetic empowerment as the evening star. And she's going to do this in a conjunction with Mercury, actually, in about 4 to 5 weeks' time. It's going to be an interesting time. We might even see eclipse manifestation events occurring around that time as well, because she will be becoming visible, and she is obviously a big part of this eclipse. Now, this point, I'll just on this topic of the superior conjunction, this is the halfway point of a cycle that began in January on the 9th in 2022, the 9th of January 2022. So where were you and what was happening in your life that was very important around the 9th of January when this cycle began? Well, we're halfway through that cycle, and so we might be experiencing a shifting of the gears pertaining to whatever was prominent in your life in early January, particularly around the 9th this year. So think back and review. This is why keeping a calendar, keeping a diary astrologically is really, really helpful, because you can look back, okay, what was I going through on the 9th? What was happening in my life? And then you can find out how the cycles are impacting you. So this is a very important Venus-Sun conjunction as well at the 29th degree of Libra, because it marks the move of Venus superior conjunction with the Sun into Libra after about 100 years of having this Venus superior conjunction with the Sun in the sign of Scorpio. So that is going to tie into the energy of this eclipse as well. Venus is in her own sign now for the next 100 years when she has this superior conjunction with the Sun, rather than in her fall in Scorpio. I love this message to us from the stars, and I wish to thank Ariel Gutman for her wonderful work that has brought this to our attention just recently with her review and research around Venus star points. So do check out her work if you would like to know more about that and the Venus cycles. But I believe because of this, we can expect greater diplomacy and harmony, balance and love evolving on Earth over the course of the next 100 years, because the Venus star point will now be in a strong sign for Venus. Hallelujah. Don't we need that encouragement now? So in the plus side, that energy is tying into the eclipse cycle. So yes, Venus is combust, but she is beginning a whole new epoch in the sign of Libra, which could see a whole shift in the dynamic of society. It's also interesting, just off the top of my head, to note that this is occurring in air signs, and we're having a massive shift of the energies in cyclical energy in the stars, moving from earth and water to fire and air in the coming couple of years, particularly sort of 2025, 2026. We're really getting an emphasis of fire and air. So we're going to note, you'll notice that the latter half of 2020, the 2020s, are going to be very different in energy to the first half. And I can hear you all saying, thank God, right now, as am I. Okay, moving on from this conjunction, which is just oh so important and such a key factor in the eclipse. So everything I've just talked about, more harmony, diplomacy, etc., it can come as a result of this eclipse, but usually it will start to manifest when Venus becomes visible in about 4 to 5 weeks' time after the eclipse. Okay, keep that in mind. So that, I should have pointed out, that's occurring on the 23rd of October Australian time. Also on the 23rd of October Australian time, both Venus and the Sun will shift into the sign of Scorpio. So there's depth and intensity that are associated with the sign of Scorpio. We've talked about that already. But when Venus moves here, that is what we're going to be embracing through her energies, so depth and intensity in relationships or with financial circumstances or with our desire for pleasure and luxuries. We can have deep and intense feelings regarding our significant attachments in life, powerful extreme passions, love or hate. Both are measurements of the same essential nature, just different degrees. This is the principle of polarity or dualism, and Scorpio represents those extremes. Extreme love and extreme hate are seen through Scorpio. So Venus here can while she's transiting here for the next 30 days or so, can have that effect, where we have extremes in love or hate in our relationships or our money or, pleasures. Scorpio is also the harbor of all extremes, as I've just said, in the dualistic world. So controlling our innate desires is one aspect of Scorpio energy, and passion passionate demonstration of our desires is also a demonstration of this energy. So you might experience both as a result of this eclipse and the energies for the next 30 days. Another example, inexplicable ecstasy in connection with somebody versus profound depression because we don't have connection. So be prepared for the extremes of Scorpio regarding Venus things. So during this transit, that's a new word, transit, you might be plunged into the depths or be taken to great heights, or both. Bit of a roller coaster. But one thing is for sure, this yearly sojourn is going to see you transformed, either stepping up the ladder of personal enlightenment and consciousness or plunging lower into despair. The power is actually in your hands. This is why we have free will. We have the power to choose something that's going to take us into our conscious enlightenment, or we stay stuck in a fixed sign, stuck and mucky and murky and miry with the loss of power in our life. What will you choose regarding relationships, love, and finance as a result of this eclipse energy in Scorpio with Venus? Big questions. On the 23rd of October as well, it is a huge day, the 23rd of October, I've got to say. And obviously the 24th, if for some people in the world, is the eclipse, or the 25th if you're in my part of the world. But Saturn stations direct. So no more Saturn retrograde for another 7 months. So enjoy this sensation of things starting to change and move forward at last, instead of being with the go-slows and the backward motion. Here is Saturn up here in Aquarius. It's actually not tying in by degree to this particular eclipse. I only use 5-degree orbs because I like my charts to be strongly represented, unless I'm using Vedic techniques, in which case I use whole sign aspects. And remember, as Joanna, my fellow astrologer at the Guiding Star Astrology site, said in her recent interview about the eclipse, Vedic astrology is actually a set of techniques. It's not sidereal astrology. And it's not tropical astrology. It's a set of techniques that you can use with the astrology practice that you determine is the correct one. So when people say Vedic astrology, don't automatically assume that it is sidereally based. There are many, many astrologers who practice Vedic astrology with tropical system. That's just needed to point that out. But anyhow, back to this. Saturn is not aspecting by a 5-degree orb this particular new moon, but it is turning direct after being retrograde, and that will tie into the energy that we feel around the time of the eclipse as well. So what does Saturn rule in your chart? What houses is he in charge of? Well, this is where you're most likely going to feel the change and the difference. When Saturn is retrograde, it tends to confine itself too much. It can be very dualistic when Saturn is retrograde. It can be confining itself, restricting itself, not allowing itself or us to step out of our extreme comfort zone, or it goes to the other end, the other polarity, and it has no boundaries at all, and it's all over the shop. There is no middle ground for Saturn-themed things when it is in retrograde motion. When it is in forward motion, it comes back into balance. And think about it. Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, the sign of balance. So when Saturn is direct, things are more balanced and we have more equilibrium. So where have you felt confined over the past 5 months? Or conversely, where have you been feeling out of control as a result of Saturn's retrograde motion? There's some profound concepts there as to why you've been feeling that because of Saturn's retrograde. Now, turning direct will mean possible changes to the capacity of influence that is carried out by the authority of figures in our lives. It may bring sort of boundarylessness in their rulership demonstrations. It might bring boundarylessness back into check in their rulership demonstrations. So, any extremes we've been seeing in the world might be sort of brought back in line, and that could prove very helpful, especially as solar eclipses affect the leadership. Okay, so we are going to see, I feel, as a result of this eclipse, maybe some time for some outworn leaders to go. People that we've just had enough of their behavior and see you later, alligator. That could be an occurrence as we come back into equilibrium with authority figures, Saturn direct. and the eclipse affecting leadership. That would be my hope. But eclipses are wild cards. It's not always easy to say this is going to be the exact outcome. So I wouldn't put money on that, but it is a possibility given the nature of these two planets, two celestial events that are occurring around a similar time. So then we have also on the 23rd of October, as Saturn turns direct, interestingly enough, it's also the day when we are going to see the end of the Saturn-Uranus square. Now, why I say it's the end of the Saturn-Uranus square is that they are no longer going to be within 1 degree of orb by aspect to each other. So this ties into the eclipse too on the 23rd of October. Oh my God, what a day. So they're both at 18, I think they're both still at 18 degrees. No, Saturn, let me double check. Yes, Saturn is at 18 degrees and Uranus is at 17. And so on this day, they actually move out of orb with that square, that 90 degree angle. Now they've been within 1 degree of orb from the 23rd of September until the 23rd of October. So we've been having this final tightness. Haven't been exact, but tight enough to be considered a square. They've been that way for about a month. And it's been a tense and frustrating transit for this last month. Uranus and Saturn tangling within 1 degree of an exact square with each other. This has been their final interaction. The finale to the restrictive and blocking energies that we have experienced in life throughout 2021 and 2022. So this whole interaction, I'll draw the line there, has been a rare 4-hit transit. Usually planets make about 3 aspects to each other and that's it. This one has been a 4th, and that has made change harder to manifest in our life. We have felt blocked at every turn as a result of this restrictive energy, especially if you've got planets around 18 degrees of Taurus, Aquarius, or either Scorpio or Leo, the fixed signs. It's been really hard for you guys. Being patient, being flexible, and open-minded has really been the only way forward. But the purpose of this interaction over particularly the last month has been to clarify where the problematic areas of your life are during this phase. And we've found, okay, I can't put up with that anymore. I need to break free of a certain thing that's been unfolding in our life. And finally, as this square now begins to separate, we will get the impetus to start doing the inner work and making the changes within us, right? I've made this decision. I've made this choice. I'm no longer going to be having this tension in my life because I'm going to take steps to break free now. Now it's time to, we've done the steady, slow slog towards liberation. Now it's time to action it as Saturn has turned direct and the square begins to separate. Yay! So we've grown. We're wiser. We're now truly ready to embrace our liberation. And in the words of the great Rolling Stones, and it's all over now. Yay! Such good news. That has been hell for the last couple of years, I have to say. As you can see, this eclipse and its energies are really, really full on. But one of the other key things down here, this little fella, not aspecting the eclipse in any way, which is a good thing. We'll talk about that at the Saros cycle when I get to that chapter of this video. But Mars in Gemini will turn out of bounds on October 23rd. Now, that means he steps out of the usual declination, either side of the equator, of the sun. And he's going to be out of bounds for the whole 2 weeks after this eclipse, leading up to November the 8th, when we have the second of this eclipse sets. So I think, apart from the Venus interaction in the chart of this eclipse, the most impactful component of this eclipse is likely to be Mars out of bounds. Because not only is he out of bounds, and I'll talk about what that means to have Mars out of bounds in a minute, but it's also in a conjunction. He is also in a conjunction with his own North Node. And we know in Vedic astrology, the North Node is a daemon. He is wild. He is erratic, a bit like Uranus. He has Uranus energy. So when Mars is out of bounds and then conjunct his own North Node as well, Mars's natural assertion and physical energy can become violently aggressive in the shadow side, everything is shadow and light, remember, or it can produce extraordinary courage and extraordinary physical abilities. It can bring out our innate human drive and our innate human ingenuity as a collective. And in the best case scenario, Mars out of bounds represents freedom and the need for freedom. So I love that, like, quite frankly, out of bounds Mars, I love out of bounds Mars people. They are fascinating to say the very least. But when they're vibrating at that higher level, they're all about sticking it to the man. I'm not taking that anymore. And I admire that greatly. I admire courageous, heroic people in that sense. Mars energies are taken to the extreme for better or worse when he is out of bounds. So he can give us a propensity for like radical passion and radical action. Now, naturally, this energy can be harnessed to challenge social norms, especially in Gemini, which is a social house. In the higher vibrational expression, this passion can yield like boundaryless creativity, social change, and justice. That is my prayer, that is what comes of this eclipse. There are astrologers who err on the side of things that, most of the world functions at a lower vibrational level, so don't expect the good. But look, in the words of the great Anne of Green Gables, oughtn't we to expect the best as well? After all, it's just as likely to happen as the worst. I have Jupiter rising. I will always look at the glass half full if I can. So fingers crossed, my friends. It is worth noting, though, let's put our feet on the ground a little bit. It is worth noting that Gemini Mars is not a helpful position for Mars to be in. He was in Gemini when Hiroshima, the bomb, was dropped. But let's pray for the higher vibration that could be. Freedom brought to social media channels, no more censorship, no more restriction. Wouldn't that be nice? Powerful social change could be another result of this. Passion in our social connections. Hopefully passion for the good, like enthusiasm, joy, and drive brought to our interactions and our connections. So we shall see. But Mars is out of bounds and part of this eclipse in that sense. The eclipse, and I'll talk about the Saros cycle shortly, but when I do talk about the Saros cycles, I'm going to mention very strongly Mars, Venus, and Pluto. They are going to be key planets when I talk about the Saros cycle. Let's talk about the eclipse itself. Well, it's occurring in my part of the world on the 25th of October, but some parts of the world will have it on the 24th. It is a partial solar eclipse, not a full solar eclipse. And it's, as we know, at 2 degrees, let's put it here, of Scorpio. 2 degrees of Scorpio. So the moon becomes dark, as we know, when it goes into new moon phase for about 3 days. This is a time for becoming introspective, a time for weighing up our inner world. And this means assessing how we feel at the very core of our being. No more hiding things in the basement. Our weaknesses, our struggles, our darkness can all see the light of day under this influence. So expect deep things to be revealed to you now, and to be illuminated for you now and shown to you now. The moon asks us where we are failing to fulfill our heart's desires, and what transformations, Scorpio, are we going to make in order to remedy the lack of fulfillment of our heart's desires. It's what it's calling us to do. We can expect the unexpected. That's with eclipses anyway, but here in the sign of shocks, it's a given. Things are going to be shocking as a result of this eclipse. Don't be surprised to see power struggles between the old order of things in your life and the new that wants to come in. And be very wary if you're into doing ceremony, and we're going to do a ceremony with the patron family for this eclipse. Be very wary of the ceremonial energies that you're working with under this new moon, because they can manifest in sudden, shocking, quick ways. Scorpio energy, but not always 100% as you might be hoping they will. So we need to be very pure in our intent when we do ceremony under this energy. Remember that the moon is also debilitated in the first 3 degrees of Scorpio. So that's where this eclipse is occurring, 2 degrees. So it's in this debilitation of the moon zone. So this eclipse is really casting the moon and all she represents into a state of difficulty, as well as blocking the energies of the sun. So it is going to be a challenging eclipse on many, many levels. Let's surmise this. It is going to be a challenging eclipse. We're going to be shaken out of our tree. There will be sudden shocks. We're going to be forced to face our shadow side. But the results are always going to be for the greater good. Keep that in mind with eclipse energies. Even if you might look back 5 years down the track and go, thank God that happened, because now look at where I am as a result. Even if it feels like the rug's being pulled out from under you during this eclipse, it will serve your greater good ultimately. We must cling to that no matter what unfolds during this particular eclipse. So I wanted to share with you the path of the eclipse, where it is going to be seen in the world. Let's start this video again. So here is the map of the world, and this is the path of the eclipse. You can see a little bit visible, then the yellow is very visible. That's the path that the eclipse is going to take, and they're the countries that are going to be, in mundane astrology, more affected by the eclipse than others. Let's watch it again. You can see Russia, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and down into sort of Pakistan and a little bit of India there, that are going to be under the path of the major section of the eclipse. So this is what we're looking at here, this area. So if you live in one of these countries, well, just know that this could be a time when leadership issues might emerge. There might be changes in leadership and affiliations and connections in some way in the world. I think I did hear that Finland was going to join NATO, which is utterly insane. I can't believe that's happening. But anyway, don't need to give my opinion on politics in the world. It is interesting to note that in the chart of Russia, this eclipse is occurring in their 10th house. So leadership in Russia, I feel, is going to be very much on the agenda. There may be a change of leadership, or there might be a change in the dynamic of the leadership. Remember the Saros cycle, or I'll point out rather that the Saros cycle of this eclipse is one of power and force. So that can be tying into this eclipse energy as well when it comes to mundane astrology. We need to be aware of these things. Now, I'm not predicting that anything particularly is going to happen. I'm just raising awareness that there is a connection here between the Saros cycle, which I'll talk about soon, and power and force. Not only that, but the visibility of the eclipse over these countries, and also the fact that this is an eclipse that affects the leadership of countries rather than the people. So keep those things in mind. Watch the news, put 2 and 2 together if you're into mundane astrology, and see what it's telling you. Okay, back to our regular viewing. So what if you have key planets that are interacting with this eclipse? Do you have planets around 2 degrees of Scorpio, particularly? Okay, yes, you can consider 2 degrees, and I only would give maybe an orb of like 2 or 3 degrees. We use very tight orbs when we're talking about eclipses. 2 degrees of Scorpio, 2 degrees of Aquarius, 2 degrees of Taurus, or 2 degrees of Leo, the fixed signs. You will notice it very strongly in perhaps a challenging way. If you have planets at 2 degrees of Cancer or Pisces, then you might notice it in more of an easy flowing way where things come to you without much effort, without much resistance. The things you want come into your life. The water signs can be blessed that way. But if you have planets around 2 degrees, give or take 2 to 3 degrees, they will be being activated now. New moon energies also represent the beginning of a new cycle as well. So, but because we know that eclipses work in 18-year cycles, do look back to 18 years ago. What seems to be repeating in your life or fruiting in your life now? What's a similar theme that is unfolding for you? Because 18-year cycles are very connected to the energy of the eclipse, okay? Particularly if you've got planets around those degrees. So let's take a look at what it means. The orb must be very tight, remember? But if you have the sun around 2 degrees of these points, particularly at 2 degrees Scorpio, happy birthday to you if you have your sun around there. You might be experiencing, if your sun is at any of these 2 degree points, some new goals in career or new career opportunities or new chances and abilities to shine in the world in some way if your sun is here. If your moon is here, there might be an emotional reset or a change in what you perceive you need to feel fulfilled and satisfied in life. Maybe what has satisfied you in the past no longer does anymore as a result of this eclipse, and you walk away from something because it's no longer bringing you the fulfillment that you wanted in your life. Plus, like I said, an emotional reset, an emotional recharge. Mercury at this point can indicate that you have some new skill sets that are going to be unfolding in your life as a result of this eclipse. You're going to perhaps make some new friendships as well, or a new friend might enter into your life as a result of this eclipse. You may also have some new business opportunities, or there might be some focus on a small business or trade and buying and selling that is somehow tied into this eclipse in an important way also. Maybe contracts too. Venus at this point of this eclipse would usually indicate that you might be experiencing a new love or revisiting not an old love, but transforming an existing love in your life, going through some change and transformation with a relationship. So if you've got Venus at any of these points, that's likely to be the case too. There might even be some new financial opportunities that are set in motion as a result of this eclipse as well. Mars at the point of this eclipse might indicate that you have a new energy, new vigor, new passion, new drive that you want to put into something. It could be a project or some creative endeavor, but you're really feeling amped up as a result of this eclipse, or something that the eclipse brings you over the coming 2 weeks. You might get very enthused and feel very vital about something in your life. Jupiter at this point could bring in some sort of new beliefs, getting rid of old beliefs and welcoming in something new understandings, new philosophies about life, new ethics, new morals. So you might be saying goodbye to an old belief that you held very dearly, and now something new is coming in. But Jupiter is a wonderful planet. He could even bring you in something new that brings you joy, something joyous, something delightful, something uplifting for your life as a result, some benefit, some lucky break that could come your way if you have Jupiter interacting with this eclipse. Saturn interacting with this eclipse could cause you to need to make some structural changes to your life, to your routines, to your working life, to your habits. You might feel even a bit limited as a result of what happens during this eclipse and restricted in some way, but that might force you to make a new change in your organization of your life that needs to happen. Maybe you've been too staying up till 2 a.m. And gaming or something like that, and along comes Saturn involved with this eclipse, and it's like, no, that's not doing you any good. We need to limit that, and we're going to have to restructure how much time you spend sitting on the computer all night long. So there can be some restructuring Saturn brings, and a new desire in you to step up into a new maturity level. So you're leaving old childish ways behind you as a result of this eclipse and stepping into your maturity, or a new level of maturity. Uranus at this point, or any of these points I've mentioned, can indicate that something very sudden, surprising, extra surprising, extra shocking, because of the nature of this eclipse, which we know has those tendencies anyway. Uranus at this point can bring something exciting, shocking, and unexpected into your life that just catches you completely off guard. Neptune at this point might indicate some sort of opportunity for creativity or glamour that might come your way, some sort of highly spiritual experiences. Even sometimes we might experience, in the positive, some divine love that occurs. In the shadow side, we could get an experience of deception, of having the wool pulled over our eyes and feeling deceived. So it could go. Neptune's a real slippery one. So be aware of both extremes that could manifest if Neptune's involved in your the chart of the eclipse with your natal planets. Pluto at this point in the chart. Well, if you have it at Scorpio, you'll be sort of part of the millennial generation, but you could also have it in other points in the chart as well. It is an indication of having to step into your own personal power, discovering a new empowerment within yourself. It's a very strong energy for transformation, but with that comes a lot of change and a lot of needing to let go of something. All the stuff we talked about for Scorpio, essentially. There is a huge transformation on the cards for you if Pluto is playing into this eclipse for you. Now, you might also like to look for your ascendant and descendant points, which will also be impacted, or your MCIC, any anticia points or contra anticia points. I have a video all about anticia and contra anticia in the Patreon family videos. You can access that if you become a patron. Midpoints, Brigo Bindu points. If they're receiving activation as well, then you know that this eclipse will have some sort of bearing upon you, even also house manifestation points as well. So check those out in your chart. If you don't know what any of those points are or what they're all about, you might like to study at the Royal Stars Academy with me, or do one of my short courses to find out more, or join the Patreon family where we discuss a lot of astrology techniques. Okay, the big one, the Saros cycle. Let me tell you all about it. This Saros cycle began on March the 6th, 1046, and it's going to finish on April the 8th, 2293. Just had to think, how do I say that? Because I'm not used to those numbers and how we pronounce years with those numbers. Okay, 2293 is when it's going to end. So we're a little over halfway through this eclipse series. And this series of eclipses, which is this cycle that repeats every 18 years, carries the energy of the initial eclipse series birth chart that occurred on March the 6th, 1046. Okay? That energy is running through the nature of this eclipse every time this eclipse series repeats every 18 years. I'm not going to explain in greater depth than that what Saros cycles are. Once again, please do consider studying with me if you would like to understand these things and how they work in greater depth. But let's talk about this Saros cycle series. Like this eclipse chart, the original chart was also conjunct Venus. So we're getting a repeat there of the conjunction with Venus that was in the natal chart of this Saros series. So Venus conjunction is important to note. It's a very key factor in this eclipse, and we've talked about Venus conjunction with the eclipse and what that means. It also, this initial eclipse chart had a prominent Mars and Pluto opposition. Not this time, thank God, but in the original eclipse it did, and therefore this eclipse carries the nature of not only a Venus conjunction to the eclipse, but an opposition with Pluto and Mars as a key factor. So what does that mean? Let's talk about this. Well, because these three planets and their influence is upon this eclipse series, we have to pay attention to them in this chart, as I've already said, and the chart of this eclipse. Remember, Mars is out of bounds, Venus is conjunct, Pluto's not really tying in, thank God. But the original eclipse series carried the energy of forcefulness, Mars-Pluto opposition, and taking power. So for what that's worth, think about how that might play out in the world, in mundane astrology, the astrology of nations and states, but also in your life. This eclipse series carries the energy of needing to be forceful and taking our power, either taking our power back or somebody taking our power from us. There's a manic energy, Pluto opposition Mars, so things can feel a little bit cray-cray, like, things are just, I'm trying to think of a Simpsons character who's a little bit, off the tree. There's probably a lot of them. No one's coming to mind, but that's what this energy is, manic kind of energy. Force and strength are part of this eclipse energy, this series energy, but usually force and strength in the realm of relationships. Okay, so somebody in a relationship scenario might be using their force and strength over someone else, and somebody else might have to break free. This is being carried in the nature of this eclipse series every 18 years. Now, in the good side, so there's some of the things that are a little bit like, oh my God, what's it going to bring? In the good energy, this eclipse can bring sudden events like falling in love, can also bring events like falling suddenly out of love, like I'm done with this, I'm over, forget it, you know. So, but falling in love, for those of you especially who have points being activated by this eclipse, you could fall in love. And it doesn't matter whether this is falling in relationship houses or not. If you have your personal chart being activated, you could fall in love as a result of the energy of the Saros cycle of this eclipse. It can also indicate sudden sexual encounters, hopefully of the wanted variety. That said, it's in Scorpio, which is a very sexual sign. The nature of the Saros cycle has this highly charged manic energy, and it's connected to sex as well. Pluto and Mars are highly sexual planets, and Venus too, I might add. So it's a very sexualized energy that's in this Saros cycle right from the get-go, and then we have it falling in this instance in the sign of Scorpio. So expect that could be on the cards for many of us. So that is the Saros cycle and what it is representing. Anyone who's been looking for a bit of love, this could be your eclipse. I hope that's the case, if that it all turns out as you wish, if that's what you're looking for. Now, for our Patreon members who are watching this video, it's time for our ceremony together to bring in right energy space for the eclipse. For our YouTube family members, if you wish to join the ceremony, then please do join us at the Patreon page. But for YouTube, you will not be having access to that. And we're now, if you're on YouTube, we're now going to move into our all signs breakdown. This all signs breakdown will be more limited than what you will receive on Patreon. You will be getting a much more extended version of how this eclipse will be affecting you. So let's take a peek now at what it means if you are a Scorpio rising, sun or moon person and having the eclipse fall in your first house. Okay, well, this is an eclipse where we can expect sudden changes and new beginnings, and an important turning point arrives in our life. Remember, there's also the Saros cycle, manic energy of relationships and sex, and this is happening on your relationship axis. So my beautiful Scorpio friends, this eclipse could bring you some sort of new relationship that starts in some way, or a relationship that ends in some way. So don't be surprised at what unfolds. There is a relational energy here that needs to play out in your life and take place, okay? You might get some sort of inspired intuition about your appearance in some way, or some inspiration that has to do with how you're going to protect, survive, or thrive in the world. Protect yourself, protect your body. So you might get an inspiring opportunity or a chance to change how you're surviving and thriving in the world. And I would also say, being such a transformative eclipse, that you're going to make big changes to how you are surviving and thriving in the world. There might be sudden changes that could lead you to take up some entrepreneurial endeavors in some way. It is a healing placement. There is potential for healing here, particularly in a bodily sense. Now, I would not be booking in for any surgeries or anything on the body around the time of the eclipse. That's just a no-no. But you might find that this eclipse could bring you some sort of healing or turning point with a situation you've got physically with your body. There's also, for our Scorpio friends, a potential to increase in popularity as a result of this eclipse, I would say, as well. So if you want to know more about how this is pertaining to your sign, Scorpio friends, head over to the Patreon family, where I've got lots more to say about this eclipse and how it will be affecting you. Okay, so if we are a Libra rising, Libra sun, Libra moon, our brief overview for our YouTube family of how this will be affecting you with this eclipse is going to be being felt in the second house area of life. This could bring a change or transformation of your value system. What you have valued in the past may not be what you value going forward from this eclipse. What you have seen as important and needed in your life may no longer be important or needed in your life. So there's a change in value system that is transformed with this. You might be starting something new as a result of this eclipse in order that you can become more self-sufficient. This is a house of self-sufficiency. Something might happen in your life that can bring in the opportunity to, I don't know, have your own veggie garden or buy a tiny house or a house on wheels or something like that. Something might happen that can trigger you to be more self-sufficient in your life in some way. There could also be something of a turning point financially for you. It might bring in new financial opportunities that you didn't see coming. So keep your eyes peeled now. Trust your intuition and be willing to sort of, be open to what the universe is bringing you financially. It could mean that something needs to leave your life. And I'm talking something material. You might need to literally make space in your life so that you can get something new. Some people might be getting rid of their old crappy couch in order to buy a new one, because this is the house of our material goods. And so there could be definitely a letting go of something in order to welcome something new in materially too. Trust your intuition as well with this eclipse on what feels safe and secure to you. Listen to the promptings of spirit. Oh, I shouldn't go down that dark alley. It feels uncomfortable. Then don't go down that dark alley. Trust your intuition regarding safety and security with this eclipse, and particularly for the week before and the week after this eclipse as well. Now, Libra, if you would like a greater, more extended overview of what is happening as a result of this eclipse and how it will be playing out in your life, do join me at the Patreon family for the extended version of this video. All right, if we have Virgo rising, Virgo sun, Virgo moon, then the eclipse energies are being felt in the third house of your chart. So this can bring big changes in your point of view or your mental perspective. The way you think about life could be going through radical altering as a result of this eclipse. You might get some big intuitive hunches, even psychic downloads, and I would say trust them if you get some sort of aha moments or epiphanies or insights in some way. A brother, sister, neighbor, or a sibling of, I don't know, well, but they're brothers and sisters, aren't they? Could be changing their relationship dynamic with you. So the type of relationship you have with a brother, sister, neighbor, relative could be going through some serious transformation for better or worse now, very much a changing connection. There could be this is the house of news, so you guys might receive some good news, maybe a letter in the mail or something like that, or an email or something that arrives in your life and lifts you up or gives you some sort of hope or changes your life for better or worse in some way. There could also be something of this is also an energy for having a turning point in small business. Or with a skill or a talent. You might have been plodding along with some skill you've been developing for years, and then all of a sudden it just gels as a result of this eclipse, and it's like, oh, now look out world, here I come, now I know what I'm doing, and it's all suddenly fallen into place. Or some people might say, I think I need to let go of that skill or that talent that I've been utilizing because it's really not serving me well and I'm not very talented at it as I would like to be, so I think I'll focus my attention elsewhere. Same with a small business. You might have been running a small business and it's just not going the way you thought, and you've given it 5 good years of oomph, and you're like, I think it's time to, face the music and call it a day and end that small business. Or some people might be starting a small business as a result of an idea that comes to them during this eclipse. Now, this house in ancient astrology was the natural house of the moon, and it was an indicator of priestesses who were messengers of the gods. If the moon was sitting here. So you've got an eclipse where the moon is a bit debilitated, I must say, but there can still be a message from the gods that comes through to you for the greater good of humanity. So do listen to what is being spoken to your spirit as a result of this eclipse. Now, Virgo, if you would like the extended version of what this eclipse is going to bring you and how it's going to unfold for you, then join me at the Patreon page where we are going into great detail for all signs. All right, now my Leo rising sun and moon friends, the energy of this eclipse is affecting your 4th house. Whoops, we're going to have to hold Leo there. All right, so it's your 4th house where you can experience sudden changes. So this might be sudden changes in your family dynamic. Now, I will tell you just a story from my experience because I'm a Leo sun. This is already happening in my life. My parents' farm has been flooded in the Victorian floods and they've had to evacuate, and they're now down here living with me while things settle down and hopefully the floodwaters disperse over the coming weeks. So hello, eclipse energy already playing out in my life. It actually, astrology is so amazing. They rang me and said, we're going to have to come and live with you on the 18th of October when the eclipse activation began. They'll probably be with me for the duration, the 2 weeks, I imagine, of this eclipse cycle. So hello, there we go. So yes, sudden changes, shocks and upheavals in family dynamics and situations with family members and parents. It is a placement for very psychic or emotionally intuitive energies. So trust your intuition. If you're feeling, and I have been feeling since the 18th, when this eclipse activation started, I have been feeling more calm and more peaceful about a certain situation in my life, and certainly a lot more loving about a situation in my life. That's a message from Spirit to me. Look at your emotions and where you're at emotionally during this eclipse energy. This is the house of emotions, Leo. It's got something to say about what might unfold in your life and your state of emotional health too, that needs to be paid attention to, for better or worse. There might be a turning point with some dynamic with some sort of maternal figure. For some people, it could be a moving away from a maternal figure, or in my case, my maternal figure coming and living with me. It's not necessarily a falling out energy at all, but it is a shift in how you relate and the dynamics of your interaction with the maternal line. There could even be, for some people, a new beginning with a garden, with a home, or a domestic situation for my Leo friends as well. So something's about to change there for you. Now, if you want to know more about how this dynamic of this eclipse will be affecting you personally, head over to the Patreon family and join me for the extended version of this video. Okay. For our Cancer rising sun or moon people, well, you guys have a very interesting placement for this particular eclipse. It's falling in your 5th house. So it's 5th house realms that are going to be most impacted for Cancer people. So there could be a change in a dynamic that you have with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a live-in lover. Some people might separate. Some people might suddenly fall in love with that partner or even reconnect with that partner. If you separate, it's possibly going to be because somebody new comes on the scene. Remember, this eclipse Sarah cycle is all about falling in love and sudden sexual encounters. So if that happens, there possibly will be a third party involved. So if you end something, and look, yeah, mostly, this is a relationship house, so it could be a committed relationship that's separating and ending for a Cancer person as a result of this. Again, there is possibly going to be a third party involved in this. But if so, remember what I said in the intro, if that's the case, then the relationship was not part of your now future destiny and purpose. It was not serving your mission here on earth. It had done its time. It was karmically wrapping up. Eclipses are very connected to karma because the nodes are what causes them, and then the nodes are the most karmic points in an astrology chart. So if a relationship ends, let it end. If a relationship comes in, a new relationship starts, it is taking you more towards your destiny and purpose. Unexpected opportunities for some Cancer people might show up that give you the chance to reveal your natural creativity. take those opportunities. You might be asked to exhibit in an art show or be part of a theatre production, or you might get offered a film role. Those sorts of things could be just wonderful for creative people who have this, creative Cancer people who are having this in their house of creativity. Some Cancer people might get very lucky and win some kind of a prize now. Under this eclipse, you may need to check your chart and see if it has the potential to be a lucky chart in that way. If you do, it's a good time to think about buying that ticket in the meat raffle. There could be somebody who paves the way for a rise in celebrity for you as a result of this eclipse. So somebody opens a door for you, gives you a lucky break to help you on a trajectory to being more popular and well-known, Cancer. Now, there could be some romantic gestures that might surprise you, things that happen that you didn't expect would. Someone rushes up to you with a bunch of flowers, or a girl asks you out that you've been keen on for years and you didn't even know that she was keen on you too. Beautiful things can happen with love, people wearing their heart on their sleeve and so forth. So some nice things and some potentially challenging things that could unfold with this eclipse. If you want to know more about the other things that are unfolding for you, Cancer, do join me at the Patreon page where I break down these eclipse energies in much greater detail and an extended version for you. Okay, if you are Gemini, rising, sun or moon, then this eclipse energy will be felt by you in the somewhat challenging and malefic 6th house. Okay, deep breath. Let's talk about this one, guys. This is a house of being highly sensitized to the pain of others, and this eclipse being quite an intense eclipse of feeling might make you highly sensitive to what other people are going through. You might feel very vulnerable yourself, or you might be very attuned to the vulnerabilities of others. This eclipse is going to heighten those energies. There could be some confrontational situations that arise in your life, Gemini, possibly as a result of the frustrations you're feeling emotionally. So it's a good idea to protect your energy and your vibration now. Have a plan for what you're going to do. Maybe do ceremony as well if you need to sort of protect your energy in some way, if that helps for you. But yes, confrontations and volatility over, power dynamics and who's in control and who's in charge are definitely likely to manifest under this energy. Some of you might win over a health issue. With this eclipse, you might win over a court issue or against a person you've been battling with. There could be a turning point with these 6th house matters, and I hope it's a turning point for the better, for your blessing going into the future. There could also be a change in circumstances that's unfolding, giving you a new beginning with a family pet or an animal. Some of you might adopt a family pet under this eclipse energy. It could bring a new pet into your life. Some of you might be saying goodbye to an old pet. This eclipse is likely to bring transformation with that area of your life. Now, if you would like to know more about how this eclipse would be affecting you personally, I go into great depth for all signs at my Patreon video. Do check that out if you would like a greater breakdown. Thank you, Gemini. All right, Taurus rising, Taurus sun, Taurus moon. Well, how is this eclipse energy affecting you? It is playing out in your 7th house of relationships. So this is quite an interesting one. Whenever we have energies falling on either the 1st house, 7th house axis or the 10th house, 4th house axis, it becomes quite a prominent energy that we need to pay attention to. Relationships that have been working well can see a shift in dynamic that takes you more into the positive, more passion, more desire, more depth, more intimacy, more wonderful sex. Like, it could be really fun. But relationships that have been strained, forced, pretentious, they might break apart under this influence of this eclipse. In fact, look at your relationship and its current status, and that's going to tell you about what the outcome this eclipse will bring you is, okay? If it doesn't break apart as a result of this eclipse and your relationship's been really shitty, then something's probably going to happen that's going to have you walking on eggshells as a result of this eclipse. And you'll be questioning, is this relationship really the one for me? Basically, this is a relational turning point, my Taurus friends. Again, this eclipse can indicate suddenly falling in love with somebody new. If you are single, that can happen for you now. It could bring in a very life-changing, karmic new relationship. There can also be, for some of you Taurus people, some successes when it comes to court cases or in dealings with lawyers or in negotiations or business contracts. I would never sign a contract under an eclipse energy, but that's me personally. It's up to you and where you are situated in life. I just try and avoid doing anything of significance under an eclipse because they're such a volatile energy. They're wild cards. You can't predict what they're going to do, but it's up to you. There could be some, because it's an eclipse energy that requires letting go in order for something new to start, the dissolving, the ending of an old contract, the dissolution of some sort of agreement that has been in place. Now, Taurus, if you would like to know more about how this eclipse is affecting you at a personal level, then head over to my Patreon page where I have a whole video dedicated to extensive breakdowns of what this eclipse will bring us all. All right, if we are an Aries rising, sun or moon person, well, the energy of this eclipse is falling for you in one of the malefic houses in astrology, the 8th house. So in the 8th house, my beautiful Aries friends, you can have amazing intuitive downloads that happen for you now. Trust those goosebump moments, those premonitions or prophetic influences. Trust your inner knowing now. This is the house of healing, but usually through therapy. And if you do therapy, you could have sudden frog leaps into insights, understanding, healing, and restoration. So it's certainly worth looking into those sorts of things over the duration of this eclipse cycle, because it's an eclipse for transformation. And let's face it, all of us have shadow work to do, and the transformation could come quick and fast for you in that regard. It is a big season of change and rebirth and regeneration for you, Aries. Your life is about to change in quite a remarkable way. It's a turning point. How your life has been up till now might be about to go through a 180-degree turnaround and change your complete state of being and how you're experiencing life. It is a very emotionally up and down eclipse. You will have, you might experience a lot of volatility with your emotions during this eclipse season. Ride it out as best you can. Be kind to yourself and understanding that, hey, look, this is a wild ride. It's the roller coaster. That's what the 8th house is. It's the roller coaster house. So hang on tight for the ride, knowing that whatever transformations are happening, you are going to be reborn out the other side into the destiny for why you incarnated. So thank you, my beautiful Aries rising people. If you want to know more about the breakdown where we look at Mars out of bounds and Saturn, Uranus energies and all that sort of thing, then join me over at the Patreon family page where I go into greater depth with this eclipse and all its interactions. Alrighty, so Pisces rising, sun or moon people. The energy of this eclipse for you guys is falling in the 9th house. This is, get my eclipse chart to stay put. Well, this might indicate that you are reaching a turning point, Pisces, with an out-of-date belief system that you might have carried for a long time. It's time to broaden your horizons, broaden your ethics, broaden your moral understanding in some way. So new beginnings await you there, but you're going to have to let go of an old, outdated belief first for that to happen. There could be also a new beginning in a dynamic with another culture that might be unfolding for you. You know, you might have never interacted with Zimbabwe before in your life, and lo and behold, the eclipse occurs and there's a foreign cultural impact of Zimbabwe on your life now. Pardon me, I'm so sorry. So a new beginning with some sort of cultural dynamic that unfolds. Also, a relationship with a teacher or an inspirational figure could be transformed right now, or a new teacher or inspirational figure could enter your life now as a result of this. Somebody new coming in as a new father figure in your life, which might also mean sort of needing to say goodbye to some teacher, inspirational guru, father figure that may have been there previously. There is also a level of heightened intuition as a result of this eclipse. I want you to trust the hunches that you get now. Listen to the emotions that you're experiencing. Observe your state of being and let that guide you, okay? The divine, the higher guides are really working through this eclipse to support you moving into your greater good and your personal destiny, Pisces. Trust this. I must say, because this is happening in the ninth house of blessing, the universe has your back and is going to bring you better things as a result of this eclipse. There could also be a sudden falling in love with somebody from another culture due to this eclipse and the nature of the Saros cycle of this eclipse. The converse of this is that someone from another culture who you may have been dating or in a relationship with might be saying thank you but no thank you, and it's all over. So there is that element tying into this eclipse for Pisces people as well. Now, that said, if you want to know more about how this eclipse is playing out for you personally, Pisces, head on over to my Patreon page because I go into great detail about how this eclipse is affecting all signs. All right, my Aquarius rising sun and moon friends, how is this eclipse playing out in your life? Let's make sure that the wheel stays put for this. Well, the eclipse is playing out for you in the 10th house, which is an angular house, meaning that it is very, very strong and you will feel it strongly. This is one of the houses of parental influence. So there might be some change in the life of one of your parents, particularly the father with this house. So there could be a turning point associated with the father or your mother-in-law if you are married as well. As the house of the mother-in-law. So there could be a change or a turning point occurring with those people in your life. So check in with them, make sure they're doing okay. It's potentially, this is the house of where there might be an authority figure who catapults you into some sort of greater worldly success and recognition. So that can happen as well, but it will be very transformative and potentially quite shocking. Suddenly you're given more responsibilities, more duties, more of a load to carry out there in the world, more public recognition, which some people want, not everybody though. So depending on who you are, you might have to carry more worldly duties and responsibilities as a result of this eclipse. It can generate a new position of leadership for you, but it might also indicate that something needs to end for that leadership opportunity to happen. So it could be a turning point in one way or another with how you're doing career and how you're obtaining the success in your life. Some people might discover the career of their dreams under an eclipse like this, but it really depends how it's interacting with your chart for positive or negative. There can be a heightened sensitivity that you're carrying now, Aquarius, to your public image and your reputation. So watch out for gossip or difficult news about your reputation right now, because that can rear its head under an eclipse like this one. Now, Aquarius, if you're wanting to know more about how this eclipse is playing out in your life personally, then join me at the Patreon page where I give an extended breakdown for all signs on the energy of this eclipse. All right, so for our Capricorn rising, sun or moon people, the energy of this eclipse, whoa, that was a bit fast, is falling for you guys in the 11th house. Okay, so this can indicate that this eclipse might bring some sort of changing dynamic with your friends. Some of your friends might leave your life now, but don't fret. It's actually creating energetic space for new friends to come in. And if they have left your life, it might not be because, oh, you hate each other or something. It could just be that they're leaving your life because their contribution to your journey is finished and your contribution to theirs is done. And so people come and go. That's a part of life. But new friends might come in as a result of this eclipse as well. It could be a turning point in the lives of your friends where they're going through some change, some significant redirectioning of some sort. It could also be a turning point for you with regard to the goals and dreams that you've been harboring in your heart. Things that you might have aspired to do in the past might be going through a really significant shift as a result of this eclipse. You might be throwing out the old dreams to create a whole new set of ambitions based on sudden inspirations and intuitive downloads that you get from this eclipse. It could also indicate a turning point or a changing point in some way with an older sibling as well. because this is the house of the older sibling. I feel that you will encounter the right people at the right time who can help you with your goals and dreams under this eclipse and help you generate more gainfulness in your life. You might meet that person now, you might already know that person, but the interactions that take place with this as a result of this eclipse season could prove financially fruitful or increase your social connections and social networks in some way, Capricorn. So if you would like to know more about how this eclipse and all its energies are actually activating your life, Capricorn, then join me at the Patreon family where I do an extended breakdown for all the signs. And finally, thank you for waiting to last, my beautiful Sagittarian friends. Sagittarius rising, sun or moon. The energy of this eclipse is falling for you in the 12th house, one of the moksha houses in Vedic astrology. So hang on to your hats. This could bring you some very serious psychic downloads that could blow your mind. It's a highly prophetic position to be having an eclipse in. Don't discount anything that comes through now, especially guidance that you receive in your dreams and visions, okay? Listen, the spirit is trying to tell you something. The divine, your ancestors, your deceased ancestors are trying to get a message through to you, you know. I mean, sometimes, you know, we fail to see all the signals around us, you know. Maybe, I don't know, Australia's ruled by Sagittarius. We're a Sagittarius ruled country. Maybe Australia's trying to get your attention and you keep seeing Crocodile Dundee on the telly, or The Man from Snowy River pops up, or I don't know, a song by Men at Work or In Excess or something is just AC/DC just won't stop playing on the radio. And it's like, when all this is happening, listen to the message from spirit. They're trying to, it could be your ancestors, could be the divine trying to get that message across. Hey, something about Australia is important for you. Maybe Sagittarius. It can also be that this eclipse is a turning point for something from your past, an old habit, a belief, a behavior, maybe even some sort of childhood trauma or psychological wounds. It could be about to be healed. This is a healing house. It's a very powerful time under this eclipse for starting fresh, either consciously or unconsciously, Sagittarius. So there is potentially a need for you to isolate to cope with these heightened energies that you'll be experiencing now. Time out for self, mental space. Take time to rest, to sleep, or to escape the everyday in some sort of healthy way to help you cope with this energy now. And for some Sagittarius people, there could be some sort of miraculous healing that occurs. This is the house of miracle cures. So divine touches in your life in some way, and your life ends up never the same again. Like I said, the heavenly beings, the angels, your spirit guides, your ancestors intervening for you in some area of your life where you need to get some support. So in that sense, this eclipse could be quite profound. Now, I do go into greater detail, quite extended detail, for all signs in my Patreon family video on this eclipse. If you would like to join us there, by all means do, where we do a great deal of work on the all signs breakdown. So that is our journey with the eclipse, my beautiful friends. Thank you for joining me. There will be another eclipse video coming out in the weeks ahead, ready for the November the 8th eclipse. But in the meantime, I hope this eclipse energy is a blessing to you and that it changes your life for the greater good. Thanks for joining me. I'll have another video for you next week.